we discuss our test results of the 2020 Mazda CX-30. Will adding fuel stabilizer affect your car's emissions test? And we talk about some cutting-edge safety technology that might be on your next vehicle. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm Jennifer Stockburger.
So before we jump into the news of the week, I thought we'd jump into the Jen Stockburger news of the week, because it's my understanding, Jen, you and your husband Jack recently made a pretty big purchase. Can you tell us about it?
We did. So I'm happy to be here. Yes, we've been home, of course, but my husband did return from Vermont this week because we bought a new truck. So very exciting for him. I think I've shared that we have a teenage son who will be driving soon. So we're going to pass down the other truck. And my husband now got a 2019 F-150, which he's super happy about. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess a couple of questions. I mean, because, everything has been turned on its ear these days with the coronavirus pandemic. I got to imagine the whole, buying process, picking it up process. And also, I mean, are there some pretty good deals out there? Did you get a pretty good deal or good financing or?
Yeah. So you've hit right on it. The deal on the price wasn't that far out of the realm of what we'd expect in a normal time. We did be able to get about 6% off sticker. We got them down about $500 below invoice. So that was good. But the real deal, to your point, was on the financing. Because it was a 2019, we have a 0% 84-month loan.
Wow.
It seems so long. For us right now, it's awesome because we have college payments and things like that. So just to keep the payment down, it's 0%. Maybe we put that money on something with a little more interest, like a credit card, wherever it might go. So it just allows some flexibility. I'm hoping we don't use all 7 years of that loan. But yeah, the deals are more on the financing. And the other thing we found, there's these huge rebates that they advertise. Those are mutually exclusive. You get the great $4,000 off, or you get the great financing rate. You do not get both. So, and I think that was common. We shopped on a couple other models of trucks as well, and that was pretty common. It's the rebate or the great financing.
And how did the whole, picking up the truck? I mean, we're used to, at the Auto Test Center, we're used to buying cars these days for our program, pretty much all online through text message or whatever. We're used to that. I don't know if many other people are, but now everyone has to do it that way. But then there's a whole picking up the vehicle process, or did they deliver it to you?
Yeah, so we absolutely did all the negotiating. All of that was done by phone and text and email. We did go pick it up. They were willing to deliver, but it was a little slower because you had to do mail documents back and forth. So we opted to pick it up. They were very, the truck was sanitized. We literally met with one person. We interacted with one person with our face masks on, signed all the documents with our own pen, and talked to the business manager. We were at the dealership in this room, but we talked to her as far as offering extended warranty, et cetera, over the phone. She just called us and walked us through all those documents. Do we want extended warranty? Do we want rust proofing? All those extras over the phone. So we literally interacted with one salesperson.
So in some ways, Jen, was it actually easier now than typical, where they seem like they want to try to upsell you on things in the dealership and keep you in the dealership as long as possible? Was that easier?
It was way more efficient. Yes, the one thing that we recognized, and we didn't need it because of what we do, is you miss the opportunity for them to sit in the vehicle with you and kind of go through the menus, how you hook up your phone, etc. We didn't need that because I was experienced enough with the truck. But that's what someone who maybe was buying a car that they weren't familiar with, they might miss that opportunity. He actually said he was willing to call us, have us go out to the truck, and he would walk us through some of that on the phone. But we declined that. But that's what people might miss in this current environment of purchasing.
But overall, pretty good experience.
Pretty
And
good.
does Jack love the truck?
He loves the truck. I think they're putting a picture up. It's very red, but he likes the color. And it's funny how his preferences for what he wanted were a little different than mine, and how he wanted a
Funny how
little
that
more
is.
truck, a little less features. I was more, why don't you get something a little smaller, get some more features? But he's the one behind the wheel. So
Yeah. And 2.7 EcoBoost V6, right?
correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So he'll be happy,
okay.
I think.
Well, that's awesome. That's kind of neat to get that like real in-person experience of what it's like to buy a car right now.
Yep.
Let's move on to actual auto news, not just Jen Stockburger auto news. And Jake, I'm going to throw this one to you. The U.S. auto industry recently committed to V2X expansion, which, if people don't know, V2X is Vehicle-to-Everything. And they're saying that they would install 5 million pieces of equipment over the next 5 years. But it's not quite that simple. There's some things hedging on whether they do this or not. Right, Jake?
Yeah, that's right. So V2X, right? The ability for your vehicle to talk to other vehicles and infrastructure. I mean, it is kind of the really exciting thing of the future that's going to really save a lot of lives that a lot of people aren't talking about. And the reason we're not talking about it is because it's not happening very quickly. And it really comes down to a lot of the ambiguity and whether or not, well, look, so if you're going to talk to all these things, right, you need frequency. Right, just like your radio station, you got to pick a frequency band, and the band that they're using, the safety band, the FCC wants to basically give it away, so they can't use it for safety anymore.
Why? Why do they want to do that?
Well, and they actually have a good point. The point is that it's being underutilized. So if the auto manufacturer, if no one's using it, I mean, there's only so much band, right? So I mean, there's a lot of electronics that could use this. So that's what the FCC is looking to do. Now, the auto industry is saying, wait a minute, we were going to use it. And, look, there's reasons why they haven't been using it. There's competing technologies and all these things. But what's really exciting here is that the biggest, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, which is basically all the auto industry together, they're like, hold on. Don't take it away. We promise we're going to use it. So they actually have pledged over the next 5 years to have 5 million installations of these. So that's part of it. So don't take it away. We're going to be using it. But the kind of the latest news is what's been kind of holding up a lot of things is like, what technology? We can use this cellular, we can use this DSRC, which is kind of almost like a two-way radio kind of technology. And nobody wants to invest a whole lot of money into one technology if the other one is going to be the long, it's kind of like, Betamax and versus VHS, right? I mean, you don't want to make the tapes if you don't know which is one's going to die. Right. So they've actually come up with a plan. And what they're saying is that they'll use both technology for the next 5 years, but then they're going to make a decision. And, it'd be great if maybe, the government when said, okay, this is the way we're going to go, everyone go that way. And that would kind of open up the floodgates. But the auto industry is stepping up and they're saying, okay, in 5 years, we're going to pick a winner and then start a phase out of the other technology over the next 10 years. So this is like the first, most concrete solution that we've seen. And there's a long time going into this. I mean, our policy department has been working hand in hand with this. Our own Kelly Funkhauser has been really, really involved in this, talking to a lot of stakeholders. So it's really exciting that we're kind of getting something there. But the crazy part is that the FCC is still talking about taking it away. So lots of pressure. Don't take away our safety band. Everyone from the auto industry to the Department of Transportation is saying, don't do this bad idea. There's a lot of benefit to holding it open. So we're going to be really closely monitoring the situation for the next couple of months.
Because the FCC hasn't responded yet to this latest.
They have not said that they're not going to take away the safety band and start using it for other reasons. So we're doing everything we can, and so are a lot of different organizations.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Well, I just can't underline this moment where it's like the safety regulators, the DOT, the auto manufacturers. I mean, even like AT&T. I mean, all of these, they're all saying, no, use this for safety, use this ban for safety. So everyone is kind of really fighting the FCC on this. Not, most everyone. There's a few stakeholders that want to use it for something else, but it's some strange bedfellows for sure. And
why is the FCC pushing back so hard?
Well, they just see there's other opportunities to use that band. There's only so much, so they want to use it for like Wi-Fi and some other things. But we believe there's other places to, if you want to expand Wi-Fi, there's other frequency bands they could use for that for.
Okay. Go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say, I call it the, if you build it, we will come. No, if you maintain it, we will come. We will fill it. We will use it. And I was saying, this technology is truly one step better in terms of crash avoidance. Even when we think of automatic emergency braking or stability control, they're still reacting to an imminent crash. The V2X, be it vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, is one step better in terms of saying, hey, there's this situation coming up, or there's this traffic thing coming up, and helping us one step further ourselves from crashes to avoid them in the first place. And I just think it's super valuable. Well, as do, the manufacturers now saying, so do we.
Right.
Well, and even, beyond the safety implications, I mean, if there's a path that we want to do towards autonomous vehicles or any of that, right now, there's news of, Tesla is getting in a situation where they're trying to recognize the traffic lights. It's not always perfect. This is a situation where they're communicating the traffic lights. So there's data and they know exactly when, not just what the traffic light says, but when it's going to change. So there's just huge implications for this.
Yeah. Not just safety, but also just traffic flow, which also in theory should improve safety as well, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, we're obviously going to follow this story for the next several months, as long as it takes. We have a very in-depth story on this topic up on our website, consumerreports.org. So definitely, folks, go check that out. Let's move on to this week virtually at the test track. I say virtually because we're not at the test track, but we have driven this car. So this week, we're going to talk about the 2020 Mazda CX-30, which we have put through our complete test program. A little bit about the vehicle. The CX-30 is an all-new SUV from Mazda. It's based on the Mazda 3 sedan and hatchback. It's going to compete against vehicles like the Nissan Rogue Sport and Subaru Crosstrek. It's bigger than the Mazda CX-3, smaller than the CX-5. There's only one engine and transmission combo. It's a 2.5-liter four-cylinder with 186 horsepower, matched with a 6-speed automatic. It can come in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection comes standard on all CX-30s. Blind spot warning and rear cross traffic warning are standard on all models other than the base version. We bought a CX-30 all-wheel drive with the preferred package, which adds things like a power driver seat with power lumbar support, heated front seats, and a 12-speaker Bose audio system. All told, our test car came to $28,645. Jake, I'm going to throw it to you first. The car's fully through our test program. What do you think of it? How did it do?
Well, look, we had actually pretty high hopes for this because the CX-3 was always kind of this kind of fun runabout, kind of sporty driving small SUV, and the CX-30, which is really based on the Mazda 3, this newest Mazda 3 that came out. That's really it's more grown up. It's more mature. It's more, it's quiet and effortless. They really, matured this vehicle, so it feels quite substantial. So I'm like, hey, great, a nice, substantial, small SUV. Wow, sounds great. Unfortunately, once you started living with it, you look at it and you look at the interior, and the interior is pretty nice, but really when you drive it, it's not as grown up as the Mazda 3. It's a little bit, it just feels tinnier. It's a little bit noisier. The ride isn't quite as nice. Honestly, especially you mentioned the price. It gives a really good reason to buy a CX-5, quite honestly, because there isn't that much daylight when you start growing up that smaller SUV. The CX-5 is a great vehicle for so many reasons. And if you really, say you want to save a little bit of money, get a used CX-5 or even get a Mazda 3. I mean, you could get the hatch, you could get that with all-wheel drive, not that much smaller. So it's kind of trying to be this Goldilocks car, kind of like right in the middle. It kind of highlights some of their better offerings, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Jen, would you agree that for a little bit more money, you would, say maybe the CX-5 offers some of the things that the CX-30 kind of let you down? Like, what are the areas that let you down about the CX-30, the biggest areas?
Yeah, so for me, and again, I always question, like Jake says, why sometimes the manufacturers squeeze some model in there when they had two good offerings on either side. I think in this case, it is the competition. I mean, just look around. How many Rogues, how many Crosstreks do you see? They felt, I think, like they needed something in that space. Those are some pretty good competitors to go up against. And I think for me, the size isn't quite. We described it as cocoon-like. Yeah. I would even go a little further that for me, it's a little tight, bordering on almost like a claustrophobic. We talk about those squatty windows being very close to the A-pillar. I mean, you really feel to me the tightness. Yeah, headroom.
You feel like the A-pillar is like right where your head is.
Yes. So that to me. And on the other end, you do fit and finish. You were saying the fit and finish is really nice, almost luxury-like in this car. So it's this give and take. To me, a little too much take. I would agree with Jake. Why not just go up to a CX-5 and have the room back, or a little bit more of the room back in that case? So, and I do think it's some pretty tough competition for the CX-30.
Yeah, it is funny how we do have these high expectations, I think as a group pretty much, at the Auto Test Center for Mazda products, because we typically like them quite a bit because they're sort of like this. They've become this sort of cheaper, more inexpensive BMW, but with the good handling and usually pretty good ride. And for a while there, they were loud inside, but then they improved that on a lot of their models. They really have stepped up the interior quality and presentation versus pretty much all their other competitors. But you get in this thing, and for me, 186 horsepower for a small vehicle like that should be fine, yet somehow it's not. This engine really needs to be revved pretty high to get, the real acceleration if you really, need some real good oomph. But then the engine's kind of has this sort of, what did we call it?
Yeah.
It's kind of has this weird raspy note that you just weren't expecting from the vehicle at all. And then it does some things like the transmission sometimes holds gears a little long. You think, well, why is it not upshifting, to the next gear? And it's not. But I will say there are some good things about it too. I mean, the handling is really nice. It has, pretty eager steering. I will also say, despite being kind of that hemmed-in feeling, once I sat down into the driving position, I didn't think it was that bad. There's actually pretty good headroom, has comfortable, well-placed armrests, and we talk about center consoles hemming you in these days, right? It's a problem in a lot of vehicles. Well, Mazda actually padded that area slightly where the right knee hits. So, I mean, they tried with some things, but then when you think about the visibility and this kind of busy ride that it has on back roads, you start to think, I mean, it's just, CX-5 just seems like such a better choice. If you have to stretch a little bit, it just seems like that's the way you'd want to go.
I would certainly recommend that people considering the CX-30 absolutely go out and give it a good, thorough drive with all the drivers that might be in it. Because like you say, you were comfortable, but when I have to pull my short-legged self up, it feels more, more confined.
And what we didn't touch on infotainment and controls, Jake. I know that's always a big thing with you. The way Mazda is doing it these days is they don't have touch screens like a lot of really most cars out there. It's you have to control it via the center console controller or the steering wheel. But we're not really big fans of the ease of use of this system, right?
No, I mean there's a reason why. Why almost. I mean, the whole industry has made a decision, right? I mean, touchscreens have kind of won. I mean, even the ones, you look at the, BMWs that were, holding out for the longest time, they're even doing touchscreens. So it kind of makes sense, at least giving the option of the touchscreen. Mazda's zigging while everyone's zagging, and they don't give you that option, and you have to use the knob. Some people like it. You get used to it. You could remember the sequences and whatnot, but I think it's a shame not giving you that option, especially when you start integrating things like, CarPlay and Android Auto, which are just, they're really designed for a touchscreen interface. So, to go and see the icons that you're so familiar with and have to kind of scroll through them is just, cumbersome for really no reason.
Yeah. So unfortunately, a little bit of a letdown, but especially in light of there's better competitors, and there's a vehicle within Mazda's own lineup that you might want to stretch yourself to the CX-5 to get that instead of the CX-30. But we do have full road test results up on our website, consumerreports.org. Please go check that out. Why don't we move on to audience questions? How does that sound?
Sounds good.
I'm in.
Okay. And don't forget, folks, send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Hopefully you guys like seeing us. Guess what? We like seeing you too. So send those video questions in. Those just make it a little more fun. And speaking of video questions, we're going to start today with Jackson from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's see what Jackson has to say today.
Sadly, I've now had two Subaru Legacies with blown engines, and so I'm looking at getting a replacement, something less than $10,000, safe, reliable, as well as fun to drive. Stick shift is preferable. I was thinking about a 2011 to 2012 Infiniti G37, but I wanted to get your take. Thanks. See you in the next one.
Okay, Jen. Well, why don't we start with you? We all made some picks for Jackson. Let's hear and we don't know what each one of us picked, so let's start with you and let's hear what your pick is.
Right. So again, the Infiniti G that Jackson mentions, good choice. But my concern there was that he was going from a Legacy to a G, maybe feeling kind of the constraints of the roominess inside the G. So what I said, speaking of liking Mazdas, was like a 2015 era Mazda 6. So a little bit sporty, manual available, maybe not such a jump in terms of room for him. One thing I didn't know is whether Jackson needed the all-wheel drive. He came from a Legacy. He was picking the G, not sure. So as a backup, and again, I know we're not supposed to have two, but I said maybe something like a 2013 Audi A4. I know it's a little upscale, but the price is in the right range. And I think, when we show the prices, most people are buying manuals or not buying manuals. So maybe the prices actually were a little lower for the manually equipped vehicles and would sink in with his $10,000 range. But yeah, little sporty on the Mazda 6 side would be my first pick.
Okay. Well, those sound like pretty good choices to me. Jake, what do you think of Jen's choices? And do you have a better one for Jackson?
Probably not.
Of course I have a better one. No. First of all, I need to get to know Jackson better to really make a good choice here. So all I could do is kind of guess a few things about Jackson. And my guess wasn't he needed a whole lot of room. My guess was he was really looking for something sporty. And when you look at the Legacy, it is all-wheel drive, but it's not front-wheel drive. And when you're a car enthusiast, front-wheel drive is nice, but I think there's something about either all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. So for me, the G is one of my favorites cars. Probably in the 20 years I've been here, it's probably one of the cars that I've just really, really enjoyed driving. In fact, that was one of the first ones I was really, drifting on the track with, and just really amazing, feedback and control. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. And if you don't need the space, there's the coupe, which is really nice. And it was available with a stick shift, which is very nice. So, I would say just go for it. And the reliability was very, very good. It's kind of interesting that, to me, it was kind of like the high watermark, I think, for Infiniti was that G.
Right.
Yeah. Those 2 years, 2011, 2012, were very good, especially the 2011 model was much better than average reliability. 2012 was above average reliability.
Yeah, so I mean, reliability for sure. They took kind of a tumble in terms of reliability with the Q50 that came after it, but also in terms of just the sportiness and the fun and everything about it. It was just this high watermark that Infiniti was trying to find itself. They were like fancy Nissans for a while. Now I think they're a little bit lost in some ways. That G I think was just the mark. That the M was really nice too, but I mean that G was just great car, and you could get it affordably right now. So go for it.
I totally agree with you, Jake. That was my first thing was if you like that G and you can get it, and if you can find one in a manual transmission, there's certainly plenty of 7-speed automatics out there. Might be a little harder to find one with a manual, but that G, the first time I drove an Infiniti G it was so fun to drive. Like you said, it was a great car for kind of sliding it around on the track. Just has the great rear wheel drive dynamics that people who really like sporty cars would love. I did come up with one other option in case as opposed to the G and you may have already proven me wrong about this, Jake, because you said not front wheel drive, but I thought, well, what about a 2013 Mazda 3? And this is not just to prove that we like Mazdas, because I know we kind of bashed on the CX-30 a little bit, but the 2013 Mazda 3, much better than average reliability. You can get it with a manual transmission. I could see it being, if he likes that space of the Legacy, the Mazda 3 is smaller, right? But if you get the hatchback, now you're freeing space up again. So
or if
that
you
was
get
my
the
one
Mazda
other
6, or if you just get the Mazda 6.
Yeah. You're always right, Jen.
Jackson's far more practical than you guys are giving him credit for.
I really like how we even this out. It's well done.
Right. Okay. All right, Jackson. Hopefully that helps you a little bit, or maybe makes you more confused. Let's move on to Jerry in Arizona. Jerry says, during my quarantine at home, I've taken my Kia Optima out for 2 20-minute drives to keep the battery charged, as well as topped off my gas tank. Knowing I won't be driving as much, I also added some fuel stabilizer. My car is due for its emission test in a month, and I was wondering how the stabilizer could affect the test, if at all. Should I try to use that whole tank up before the test? Jake, let's throw it to you first. Fuel stabilizer, will it have any effect on an emissions test?
It shouldn't. You should be absolutely fine. If anything, there's probably some cleaners in there that are probably going to improve things. I mean, there's a chance that your emissions might actually improve, but I would not worry about it. You can certainly go through the emissions, and also the amount that you're putting in there is really so small that in terms of burning, it's just like
it's only a few ounces. It's going to only be a few ounces.
Right. So don't worry about it. Don't just use up. Go for a drive if you want to, but don't use it up just for emissions.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Kurt from Cincinnati says, I have never been disappointed in any vehicle Jen Stockburger liked. Oh, come on, Kurt. You got to be kidding me here. Don't kiss up to her. She already has a big enough, very red head, okay? Anyway, Kurt continues, so I'm hoping to get some of her advice. I recently rented a 2020 Hyundai Sonata and was very impressed. However, the performance of headlights is extremely important to me, and I won't even consider buying it until Jen rates those headlights. Jen, how did they perform? Am I safe to buy this car? For those of you that don't know, Jen Stockburger is in charge of our headlight testing at the Auto Test Center. So Jen, what do you have to say to your biggest fan?
So Kurt is obviously, again, another very bright individual. No.
Bright headlights?
Oh, I didn't get that. Very good. Yes. But no, it is funny when you find someone, it may not even be someone who has similar taste as you. And it seems like, it could be a car, it could be decorating, it could be fashion. You just like everything they do. So I get that. We have others that we work with that I'm like, if they like it, I probably like it. But in a short answer, yes, you are good. We have tested the 2020 Sonata headlights. They are good. They are standard LEDs, just so you are aware, Kurt. So they're very bright and white, but they do a good job of lighting the road, both low or high beam. And they have standard Hyundai's high beam assist, what we would call automatic high beams. So they help you take advantage of that additional high beam seeing distance more often. So yes, you are good if you like the car otherwise, and that was the deal breaker. Rest assured that you will have good visibility at night. Which
is interesting because you have found out, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, that LEDs don't always give as good of a seeing distance down the road as you would like, but this one actually was okay.
Right, and I would say the same about any headlight technology. There are good and bad of halogen LEDs, even HIDs, which are becoming less commonplace. But you really have to judge. You can't say that just because it's an LED, it's going to be better. Is it going to be brighter?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Is it going to be wider? Probably. But is it going to get further visibility straight ahead down the road? Maybe not. And we've seen that time and time again. We've seen halogens outperform LEDs, when we're out there on the same test night many, many times, just in terms of absolute seeing distance.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to our final question. This one comes from Brad. Brad says, I've watched Talking Cars for a while and became a CR member because of it. I'm sorry to do this, but I have to ask Jake to turn in his driving enthusiast card for only choosing SUVs as his favorite vehicles to drive in episode 247. Jake Byrne.
What?
Brad continues. Anyway, during that discussion, you mentioned how cars must now have pedestrian detection to be considered a top pick. These systems can cost a fortune to replace, and knowing that cars stay on the road for an average of 10 to 12 years, is there a tipping point where they will be on so many cars that accidents and therefore insurance premiums will go down? Or are we stuck paying more insurance and repairs forever? Jake, we're going to start with you because Brad called you out on your apparent complete love of SUVs. And also, so you need to do some Jake-splaining about that. And also maybe you can talk to his actual answer.
Not answering the question. No,
He's offended.
I'm trying to remember when I said my favorite cars to drive are SUVs. I mean, we'll have to invite people to go back and check that. I mean, I know when it comes to SUVs, there's like some cars that are better for enthusiasts, like the CX-5 we were talking about. But
yeah, it could be an enthusiast-oriented SUV you might choose, but I don't remember you ever going out and saying your favorite
best
cars
to
are SUVs.
drive.
You just said it's an Infiniti G.
I think I just said it was the G, but yeah, my favorite cars to drive, incidentally, are cars that have stick shifts, and there's not a whole lot of SUVs with stick shifts, but
right.
that wasn't the question. Okay,
right.
No. So questions about pedestrian detection, and this is a really good one. So look, a lot of these advanced safety systems, you get these cameras and sensors, and if you're in a crash, you do have to replace them, and they do cost some money. When it comes to pedestrian detection, it's not a whole lot additional hardware. It's more of like kind of the smarts to recognize the pedestrian. And when you have some of the sensors that are behind the windshield and they're high up, I mean, they're probably not going to be impacted in a crash. It's not that they're going to wear out. I mean, these cameras and things like that, it's not like, oh, it's old, so it's just breaking on its own. So we don't see a lot of that. But absolutely, crash damage, they do cost more. But the way to think about it is these are systems that prevent you from getting into crashes. So if you're having less crashes, it offsets the additional costs. In fact, in many cases, you're actually paying less in the long run because if each crash costs a little bit more, but you're getting a lot less crashes, you're saving money. And that is what the Insurance Institute has seen. This is what insurance companies are actually seeing. And this is why they're actually giving you insurance benefits sometimes in these, because they realize that even though it's more expensive, it's preventing these crashes.
Yeah, well, and speaking of less crashes, I mean, right now, because of so many people across the country isolated at home, there just aren't as many people out on the roads right now. You got to think we're going to have less crashes. I've heard in big cities, there's less pollution. I mean, this coronavirus has had an interesting, weird effect on things.
Yeah. So just on that point, UC Davis did a big study, isolated to California, but still, and they put some hard numbers to the crashes that have been avoided since the stay-at-home order in California. So they were saying California, in the 22 days, have estimated a $40 million a day savings because of the lack of crashes.
Wow.
And they broke it down. And it was stuff, what I found interesting, it wasn't stuff you think about, like this question. Yes, insurance premiums. But they brought up the ambulance drivers that have to respond, the street workers that have to go clean up the crash, the fact that insurance premiums are pooled. So all of us who aren't crashing are still paying for those who are. And that investment money, that the premiums don't necessarily offset all the costs of a crash. And it's the investment of that money that actually pays for the claims. So this whole thing about all these pooled resources medical insurance premiums, the injury and death, costs related to motor vehicle crashes. If those come down, all our health insurance, medical insurance premiums come down. So it's this huge picture of what avoiding crashes can benefit all of us in terms of pay. Maybe not immediately in that, yes, you have to replace your AEB or your pedestrian detection system, but in so many other ways that crash avoidance has real cost benefits to all of us. And it was a very, very neat study if you want to read it.
Well, and it's interesting what you bring up there, Jen, because we have been asked to isolate at home, to stay at home as much as possible, and of course you need to get out sometimes. Not just for your vehicle's sake, for your own sake, maybe to just go for a drive or to go for maybe a hike in the woods. But you actually should think about maybe not doing too much even excess driving, because think about it. The more people on the road, the bigger the chance of getting in an accident. Now you're asking more health workers to get involved in something that they didn't need to have gotten involved in, whether it's the fire people, police, the health workers at the hospital. So, I mean, yes, get out and drive your car a little bit and don't go stir crazy. But, it is a good idea to still right now minimize any excessive driving that you don't have to do.
Well, I think it's driving, it's kind of that sign off everyone has now. It's like, stay safe. And everyone's kind of thinking about, be careful and don't get coronavirus. But the truth is, I mean, I think of it all the time. If I'm running the trails, I'm taking it easy past those rocks. If I'm going mountain biking, I'm not going down that over that rock that I normally do. I'm going to walk it, because you don't want to wind up having to have any kind of emergency for whatever you're doing.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's all stay safe out there. Okay, folks, that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next week.